When we look at the Persian Gulf today, the dominant narrative is almost entirely framed around modern security anxieties. It is viewed as a volatile choke point, defined by military tension, petrostates, and the constant threat of blockades. The stakes driving this anxiety are massive. Right now, approximately 20% of the world's total supply of oil and liquefied natural gas moves through the Strait of Hormuz. But treating the Gulf solely as a modern hydrocarbon reservoir ignores the region's actual historical baseline. The wealth and geopolitical relevance of this basin are the result of a 5,000-year continuous operating system of maritime trade. To understand how this system works, we have to apply the historical framework of Fernand Braudel and look past the nation-state. If we strip away modern political borders, city lights, and oil infrastructure, we are left with a single, deep-time structural unit. In the pre-1500 world, roughly 90% of global populations relied on localized, land-based agricultural economies. The Gulf functioned as an integrated maritime bridge linking the Mediterranean directly to the Indian Ocean. Filtering the Gulf's identity exclusively through the lens of 20th-century oil obscures the mechanics of survival, commerce, and cosmopolitanism that have allowed this region to maintain its autonomy across millennia. The 14th-century Arab scholar Ibn Khaldun noted that geography is destiny. For the Gulf, that destiny is dictated by a lack of arable land for agricultural surplus and three imposing natural barriers: the vast Arabian deserts to the west, the high Zagros Mountains to the east, and the extensive Basra marshlands to the north. These three barriers functioned as an anti-imperial shield. When massive land-based empires like the Romans or the Iranian Sasanians attempted to project power and conquer the coastlines, their armies stretched their supply lines to the breaking point and fractured against the topography. The local populations adapted to this geography. Whenever imperial tax collectors did manage to reach the coastal settlements, the inhabitants simply vanished, finding temporary refuge in high mountain passes or deep desert oases until the empires retreated. This defensive advantage extended into the water. Before the advent of modern topography and charting, the Gulf's convoluted, shallow coastlines offered countless hiding places, making it difficult for large imperial fleets to dominate the maritime routes. While foreign armadas struggled with the coastal geography, local merchants navigated the hidden inlets and shallow waters using highly agile traditional wooden dhows. The land offered almost no agricultural capacity, and foreign empires could not project sustained military power. The people of the Gulf relied on maritime trade for their survival. The antiquity of this trade-first society is visible in the ruins of Dilmun, an ancient kingdom centered in modern-day Bahrain around 2000 BC. Dilmun possessed a geographic monopoly. It controlled a reliable freshwater system, making it the mandatory resupply depot for any merchant traveling between the early civilizations of Mesopotamia and the Indus Valley. The scale of this early economy is documented through archaeology. The organized logistics of merchant fleets sailing in asphalt-waterproofed reed ships supported a society wealthy enough to construct over 11,000 burial mounds. As coastlines and political powers shifted, the primary nodes of trade moved. By the second half of the 8th century, the port city of Basra emerged as the primary northern gateway to the Fertile Crescent. Basra became Islam's economic and cultural powerhouse. The exchange of copper, pearls, and spices drew Persian, Indian, and African merchants into tight quarters, catalyzing an intellectual synthesis and the exchange of new philosophies. The early Gulf established a multilingual, multi-ethnic operating system that defined the region's intellectual trajectory for 1,000 years. This absolute dependency on maritime networks reached its extreme in the southern Iranian port of Siraf during the 10th and 11th centuries. Siraf was remarkably barren. It lacked the natural springs of Dilmun and was forced to import its own drinking water on ships. Despite this, it grew into one of the wealthiest transit points in the Indian Ocean. This chart illustrates the feedback loop of Siraf's survival. The city relied on strategic tolerance. If a city is dependent on foreign merchant capital to buy its drinking water, alienating diverse traders means immediate starvation. Social openness attracts merchants, securing the customs revenue necessary to keep the city alive. To ensure the steady flow of capital, Sarof's leaders built dedicated infrastructure and separate dining quarters specifically to accommodate the dietary customs of visiting Indian merchants. Because Sarof lived exclusively by trade, it also died by it. When commercial routes shifted away from the city in the 12th century, the port collapsed. In the harsh geography of the Gulf, religious and cultural accommodation was the literal price of drinking water. This economic imperative was so strong it could override the ideological goals of heavily armed foreign empires. In the 16th century, the Portuguese Empire arrived at the Strait of Hormuz, bringing a hostile, crusading zeal previously unseen in these trade networks. The actions of King Sebastian of Portugal illustrate the conflict between crusading intent and economic reality. He died during a mission against a Moroccan sultan, yet during his reign he personally intervened to stop the planned destruction of Islamic mosques in Hormuz. This chart shows the imperial math behind his decision. The Portuguese crown was carrying a crushing amount of debt. They could not afford to antagonize the Muslim and Hindu merchants in Hormuz, whose customs revenue kept the imperial ledger afloat. Catholic conversion efforts were restrained to protect the bottom line. The tension between imperial control and local commercial autonomy finally broke in 1650. An alliance of Muslim Omanis and Hindu Banyans expelled the Portuguese from the port of Muscat, shocking Europe. A local multi-faith trade coalition defeating a major Western naval power in the mid-17th century provides clear evidence of the resilience of the Gulf's integrated maritime network. The discovery of commercial oil in the 20th century introduced a sudden rupture in this ancient timeline. This graph tracks life expectancy from 1960 to 2022, demonstrating how hydrocarbons acted as a rapid socioeconomic supercharger. In 1960, life expectancy in Saudi Arabia and Qatar was 46 and 59 years, trailing behind the United States. By 2022, both Gulf nations had intersected and surpassed the U.S. average. As the oil boom transformed the region, the city of Dubai, which began as a modest fishing port in 1833, chose a different path. To avoid relying on finite fossil fuels, Dubai actively revived the Gulf's ancient trade gene. The hyper-modern skyline of Dubai results from applying historical strategic tolerance to the modern era. Today, expatriates make up over 80% of the city's population. The Jebel Ali Free Zone serves as the 21st century technological manifestation of the exact same tax and trade policies practiced in medieval Sarof. Modern Gulf megacities function as a modern expression of the region's 5,000-year historical baseline as globalized transit hubs. Existential risks to the Gulf today include sectarian conflict and terrestrial warfare. These forces violate the region's core survival mechanisms. We can see the region attempting to repair its economic network to counter these risks. The end of the Qatar blockade, the Yemen truce, and the 2023 normalization of relations between Saudi Arabia and Iran are pragmatic steps to restore stability. However, the post-2023 conflicts in Gaza, combined with unpredictable signals regarding the future footprint of the U.S. military presence, have introduced new uncertainties. If Western influence recedes, the region's deep-time economic patterns suggest a likely reintegration with its ancient partners in South Asia. History in the Gulf is circular. Across 5 millennia, imperial powers have come and gone, but dialogue, tolerance, and cosmopolitan commerce have proven to be the only permanent defenses against the harsh realities of its geography.